Okay, so we are gonna start on this webinar. The only thing that we have to do is we will start with a small introduction round where I would want to understand a little from you. Things that I would want to know is the technologies that you have worked on, and if you want, you can just share what is the motivation behind learning Hadoop. Why did you decide to take up the Hadoop training program? So can we have some quick responses on the chat window, please? And I will also introduce myself to you all, tell you about myself. So can we have a few quick responses on the chat window? The technologies that you have worked on, the motivation to learn Hadoop. Two things I would want to understand. Alright, so we have got a few responses. So we have people from Oracle, we have people here from SAP. Alright, so quite a few people with experience, 10 years, 12 years. That's really nice. I mean, we have quite a, okay, we have people from mainframes. That's really nice. Okay. So that's great. I think we have people from different backgrounds and different kinds of experiences here. I see people with 10 years, 12 years. I see people with 2 years. Oh, recruiting. Okay, recruiting background people are also here. So that's really good. Nice thing. So we would start on our training program here on basically the webinar that we're going to do. So I am Jeet and I am the director here for Wiki Training. So this Wiki Trainings is the leading online training provider company, and I am one of the directors here. Apart from this, I have been working on Hadoop for more than I have 10 years of experience on Hadoop. I've been working for almost 6 years, Hadoop and big data technologies, and I have also worked on some of the other cloud technologies. I am pretty familiar with Salesforce. I have good amount of understanding on Microsoft cloud-based technologies as well. So that is about me. And prior to that, I have worked on Java J2E platform as well. Right. So that's overall about my experience. I lead this Wiki Trainings operations, and I do take up Hadoop projects, and I've worked on certain Hadoop implementations in this career span, and we do have a different Hadoop implementation company as well, and we have our own clients, right? So there we actually cater to our clients. So that's overall about me. So I am pretty much into the projects, management, and the training part, right? So, the intention for this webinar is pretty simple. We want you to understand a little more about Hadoop. We want you to have a good understanding of Hadoop, what it is, the basics of it. We understand what we have seen in, last few months or maybe, a couple of years. What we have noticed is there are a lot of people who want to learn Hadoop, make a career into it. Big challenge that they have is they are not aware of the basics, and they do not understand the technology pretty well. So that is where they actually are struggling. So the intention for this webinar is to impart a little more knowledge, make you a little more aware of Hadoop, what it is, how it works, and everything, right? So we'll start here. So before we talk about Hadoop, Hadoop is basically not the big question here. So we are not even worried about Hadoop. We are not even going to talk about Hadoop. Hadoop is not the origin, and Hadoop should not be the first point of discussion today, right? The first point of discussion that we should have here is big data. All right. So we have been hearing Hadoop everywhere, and we start talking about Hadoop. But trust me on this, it's actually not about Hadoop. It is about big data. So let us understand big data before we get into our discussion on Hadoop. I'll talk about Hadoop as well. But before that, we need to understand big data. So I know that a lot of you here might have questions in mind which are like, what is big data, what is Hadoop? Are these two both the same things? Right? Some places you hear about big data, some places you hear about Hadoop, right? So what is big data, what is Hadoop? A lot of questions you guys might be having, and I can assure you that at the end of this webinar you will go back with a very clear understanding of what is Hadoop, what is big data, what is the difference, how does Hadoop work, or the Hadoop architecture. I will not be able to explain the entire stuff here in this webinar, but I will give you a very good understanding on the basics, right? So that is what my job is going to be. I'll help you understand things in details. So first question is, what is big data? So I see a few people coming up with the thought that big data and Hadoop are the same thing, or are they different? What is this? So we will talk exactly on the basics. We are not going to talk about any technical aspect as of now. So I'm not going to get into any technical thing as of now. Let us understand what is big data. As the name suggests, let's go by the literal meaning of it. Big data. That's it. Keep it very simple. Big data means big data, a database which is huge. That is big data, right? Now big data is what? Is it a technology? Is it a software, hardware? So many questions around that. Are we going to learn big data? Is that a software that we are going to learn? Is that an application that we are going to learn? No. Big data is a challenge. It is a challenge that the business has in today's time. Okay. What is the challenge? What is so challenging about this big data? Okay. Now let's talk about this part. Before we get into big data, let's take a small, let's understand a small scenario of the business in today's world. Nowadays, what is happening? The competition in the business has grown a lot, right? And because of that competition, the businesses are aiming to provide, excellent solutions to their clients. They are aiming at providing excellent solutions, solutions which can actually help their client in, whatever possible ways, doing some analysis, or it's not just about providing services to the clients. It's also about forecasting what will be the client requirement. So if I am producing, let's say 100 units of my product this year, what will be the requirement next year? Which product is going to be selling more next year? What is the trend, customer purchase trends? So there are so many things which a business needs to figure out. It's not the same old style of doing business where companies used to produce and then simply sell in the market, right? So that's about the production companies. The services companies, your mobile phone providers. Have you ever noticed that the moment you start making a few STD calls, your service provider automatically tracks the trend of your calls being made, and they start sending you SMSs related to the STD packs. If you want to make STD calls to this, that, all that stuff, right? So they're tracking your, the way you consume things. So your consumption, trends are being tracked. So that everything, so the companies decide on their packages, the kind of services they are going to provide, the kind of products they have to launch. Everything depends on these kind of data analysis, and this data comes not just from one or two sources. This comes from everywhere. Yeah, I do not know how many of you would have noticed that thing. Nowadays, companies have started doing small thing where if you go to a particular website, let's say you go to Make My Trip and you try to search for a flight from India to Bangkok, and then you close that, you do not book the flight, and then you close it. If you are on some other website, you start receiving, small ads related to that. So what is happening, your every information is actually being tracked. So companies are actually trying to track the information and then send you certain details related to that. So a lot is happening, right? So what do you think? All this happen, automatically? Do the companies, simply have something which magically does all these things? No. It all depends on the data. So basically what is being tracked? The data or the information, right? So now this big data is a big challenge for the companies. Growing requirement, in the industry for advanced solution, for enhanced solutions, a growing requirement of the business data also, right? So there are certain industries which are particularly which have a huge amount of data. You think of banking, you think of insurance, you think of the social media industry, okay? So you think of telecom. So these are industries where anyhow the data is huge. But I'm just not talking about these things. Think about other industries. Think of education industry. Education industry never had this much of data. Nowadays, in a recent, in the last few years, we have actually implemented certain solutions for some schools, right? And we have noticed that these schools actually track kind of all the information of their students, right? Why are they trying to do this? So that they can have everything in one place, and they can do analysis, and then they can do whatever is necessary, and then again to provide a good solution to the parents that okay fine, you can find all the reports of your kids at one place, so that sort of thing. The similar kind of a solution is being implemented into medical industry also. So now I do not know how many of you might have experienced the same thing. You go to a big hospital and you would see that they track all your information in one place. You go next time, they will have the information what what was diagnosed and when did you visit them last time, who was the doctor, what was prescribed, a lot of things. So it's not just about those industries, right? It's not just banking, insurance, telecom. So these industries anyhow had a huge amount of data earlier also. But other industries are also moving into it. That is where this big data is becoming a big challenge for almost every industry. So now there is no industry which does not require huge amount of data, right? So what we need to understand, big data is basically a challenge, fine? You are a company, you need to store a lot of data, and you need to do analysis on that data. So for that purpose you have to deal with a huge amount of data, no matter which industry you are into. And this big data, this huge amount of data becomes a challenge for you. Alright? So big data is a big challenge. Now we'll talk about what is the solution if that is a challenge. But before that, let us talk a little more about the challenge. Let's understand the challenge. Sorry. Let's understand the challenge a little more in details. Facebook. Can you think of how much data is generated by Facebook every day? 500 plus terabytes of data per day, right? So think of New York Stock Exchange. How much data is generated there every day? So these are some small examples. So let's take the example of Facebook in particular. Let's talk a little about Facebook. So this Facebook users spend 10.5 billion minutes, almost 20,000 years online on the social network. Okay, Facebook has an average 3.2 billion likes and comments are posted every day. Okay, so this is the amount of data which we are talking about. Now you try and understand what is kind of size of data when we are talking about a 500 plus terabytes, let's say 500 terabytes in a day. Every day this is growing. The challenge is not that you have a huge data. The challenge is that it is growing, and you do not see any end to this growth. You think Facebook? Can Facebook tell me say that okay, fine, this data will continue to grow for the next 20 days or next 1 month, and after that will stop? No, this is all going to increase only, right? So every day your data is actually growing. Okay. And this is the situation with all the companies. So Facebook is one example that we are taking. I just wanted to take the example of Facebook because you can easily relate to it. But this is a challenge with every company. The other companies or the other industries may not have this volume, but still that volume will keep on growing. So for 1 month from now that will become bigger, and again 1 month from then it will still become bigger. So it's not about the size of the data only, it is again about the scalability as well. So how flexible, how scalable can you be in your, or the kind of solution that you have, right? So if you have a solution to maintain the data till date, do you have a solution which can maintain your data after 6 months also? Do you have a solution which can maintain, okay fine, if you are ready to maintain the data growth in next 6 months, would you be able to take care of the data growth in next 1 year? That is the challenge. All right. Let's have a look into these figures. What happens in an internet minute? In 1 minute of internet, what happens? Let's have a look into this. YouTube. When you look into YouTube, there are in 1 minute 30 hours of video is uploaded on YouTube every minute. Every minute 30 hours of video is being uploaded. Now you just think about it. And 1.3 million video views are registered every minute. So all these things need to be tracked, right? So have you ever seen that you upload some video on the YouTube and after 2 days it goes away? No, right? All the videos are there. So all these things need to be tracked. 277,000 logins per minute on Facebook. 6 million Facebook views per minute on Facebook, right? So this is what, and these are just a few examples. I mean, like YouTube, Facebook, because we know these things. What is happening on other stuff, we do not know, right? So every internet minute has so much of data which is actually being processed, or so much of data which is actually going through it. All right. Now, so far whatever we have talked, you might have thought that okay fine, big data is all about the size of the data. The size is growing every day, the volume of the data. But the point is the volume is not the only challenge. So far whatever we have talked, we have just looked into one aspect of it, but there are other aspects as well to it. Volume is not the only challenge in big data. When we are talking about big huge data, so far we are just thinking on the lines of the volume, but trust me, volume is not the only challenge, and it is the smallest of the other challenges, right? I'm pretty sure you would want to understand what are the other challenges then, right? If volume is the smallest, what are the bigger challenges? The challenges that we have are the 3 V's of big data. So big data has 3 V's. What are those 3 V's? Volume, velocity, and variety. So the challenge with your big data is not just on the volume side, it is also on the velocity and the variety of the data. Volume is a challenge which still is manageable. For example, think of it, if you have, let's say you have a 100 GB hard disk, alright? Now you have 50 GB of data. You can store it in a 100 GB hard disk, workable? Okay. Now I give you additional 50 GB of data. So hard disk is 100 GB, you already have 50 GB, I give you 50 GB, still manageable. You can manage on your hard disk. Next week I give you 50 GB more, 50 GB of data more, right? Then what will happen? At the max, what you have to do, you have to buy an external hard disk, and then you can store that data also, right? So that is a challenge, but still something which can be managed, right? Because purchasing a hard disk is kind of a solution that you have. You can add on the hard disk, or you can enhance the hard disk capacity, right? But now if I am talking to you regarding processing of the data also, if you have to process that data also, storing is just one part of it. But if I say that, okay, it's not just that your data will get doubled, you have to increase your processing speed also, right? Now that is where you will be, you will get stuck in a position that, okay, fine, now how do I enhance the processing speed? Because velocity has to be same. Is Facebook becoming slower day by day because there are more people joining in Facebook? Its processing speed is not getting affected, right? So if more people join Facebook and Facebook keeps on becoming slower, then there is no point, right? It has to maintain its same velocity of processing, right? So a like or a comment still gets uploaded in the same time. So Facebook never tells you that, okay, fine, you put a comment today, it will get be available to others after a week, because we have a huge amount of data. We are dealing with 500 terabytes of data every day. No. So it's not just about the data being stored. They have to store the data and they have to process it. So processing again does not just mean uploading or making the data available. It also includes the analysis of the data. Real-time analysis is happening nowadays, right? So the data processing is the other thing. So the velocity at which we are looking at, that is the second big challenge. And trust me on this, this is the bigger challenge. It's bigger as compared to the volume of the data. Now the third challenge, and in fact the biggest of all three, is the variety. What is this variety thing? The third V of the big data. What is this variety of data? It's pretty simple. It is that the data nowadays, when we are talking about data, we are not just talking about the structured format of data. It's not just the data which is in tables, right? Tabular data, it's not that. The data can come in any structure. When I say any structure, I actually mean any structure, right? It can be PDFs, it can be photographs, it can be videos. On Facebook, you go and upload, photographs, and you put videos, then you put photographs of different formats, and then you put your comments, and you put likes, smileys there. So it's not a structured format of data. So for every business, there are the unstructured data that also needs to be taken care of, right? So that is again a challenge. So companies have to deal with big volumes of data, right? Companies have to take care of the velocity, the processing speed, and they have to take care of the data with different varieties. Okay, so that is the thing. So these are the three V's, and now you understand. Now I think the challenge with the big data is pretty clear to us, right? So now we understand what this big data, big challenge is. All right. Now, if this is the challenge, then what is the solution? So the challenge, when we're talking about this volume, variety, and velocity, so what is the solution to that? Okay, Hadoop is the solution. Okay, Hadoop is a framework which provides you that solution to this, right? So I'll talk about Hadoop framework a little later. But before that, I just want to talk about the DFS, the distributed file structure. Okay. So what is this distributed file structure? Distributed file structure is a simple architecture which you need to understand, where you do the same work with multiple machines. Okay. Instead of having one machine, you put multiple machines to do that work. Okay. Why do we do the same work with multiple machines? To, instead of, for example, you have 100 GB of data which needs to be processed, right? Now for 100 GB of data, to process. I'm just giving you an example. We'll talk a little more in the architecture side once we start the training program. So just think of a very simple example. Don't get into the technical aspect of it. If you have 100 GB of data that needs to be processed, what are the options you have? One, build one machine with 100 GB capacity, one single machine with big capacity, right? And second, have 10 machines or maybe 5 machines with 20 GB capacity each, or build 10 machines with 10 GB capacity each, right? Now, how does it make a difference? The difference will be made in this way. For example, you have one machine, okay, and you have put all your 100 GB on this machine. This machine has, let's say, 4 input-output channels, okay, and each channel can work at a speed of 100 Mbps. All right. Then your processing of the data of 100 GB on this machine will take certain amount of time, right? However, if you distribute that 100 GB into 10 systems and every 10 machines, every machine has 4 input-output channels and each channel has 100 Mbps. Your processing speed will become faster. So that is number one advantage. So I was just talking about that. Prior to this, we were just talking about that example, that if you have 100 GB of data and suddenly if it becomes 200 GB, you increase the hard disk, but your processing speed will not increase, right? So that is one thing. So this distributed file system structure or this architecture actually talks about distributing the files into multiple machines so that the processing speed can be still managed, right? So increase of data does not result in decrease of the processing, the velocity. It does not result in decrease of velocity. So to maintain that, you have to increase the number of sites. So that is one reason for it, right? Why we are talking about distributed file system. Second reason for distributed file system is that a single machine will have a limitation. Fine. A single machine will definitely have a limitation. You will have a limitation of your hard disk, right? How much data can you put on a, forget about everything else, how much data can you put on your laptop? Whatever is the hard disk capacity which is allowed, whatever is the biggest hard disk which is available in the market. You cannot design a hard disk of infinite size, right? So one machine will always have a limit, whatever the limit be. It might be a different limit today, it can be a different limit after 5 years, but it will still continue to have a limit. So for example, if you have a hard disk of 1 terabyte, do you have a hard disk of 1 petabyte in the market available? No. So you will go and get stuck somewhere. But when you are talking about multiple machines, you just have to, whatever your size increases, you will not get stuck. So your scalability factor comes here. So for example, I mean, just when we are talking on these lines, if you are Facebook, okay, and you are getting 500 petabytes of data every day, that is what we said. Let's forget about 500 petabytes, that's a big number. Let's say 1 GB data every day you get, right? And you have to put it in a system, your own system, right? Now if you try to build one single machine, what will be the size of that machine? 100 GB? That will take care of 100 days. After that, will you go and upgrade that machine? Okay, now you say that, okay fine, I will put 1000 GB kind of thing, which will take care of 3 years. Alright. But are you not then wasting your all that 900 GB kind of thing unnecessarily, because you are not now using it. Unnecessarily you have invested in all that big machine right now, and you are not even using that part. That will come after 2 years, 3 years, right? So that is the challenge with one single machine. But with smaller machines, what you can do is you can just keep on increasing them whenever required, right? And you can actually have an infinite storage space, right? So that is the advantage of distributed file system. So distributed file system is distributing the files into multiple machines and then processing it, so that the processing happens faster, and that too you have a scalable architecture or framework available, right? So let's take this case study itself. Okay, let's say this 1 terabyte of data needs to be processed on one machine with 4 input output channel. Each channel has 100 Mbps. It takes 45 minutes to process, right? The same work, if it is distributed in 10 machines of, right, the data gets distributed in 10 machines, and each machine has the same kind of what is it, the system setup, and you have 4 input output channels here for each machine, and each channel has 100 Mbps. The same work can be done here in 4.5 minutes. Got this thing, right? So here, if you increase this from 1 terabyte to 2 terabyte, it will become 90 minutes, right? But here it will still be 4.5 minutes, right? So because it is being done over 10 different machines, and every machine, is getting some data which it can easily process. Got that thing? So that is basically our distributed file system. Alright. So Hadoop framework works on this distributed file system. Okay. Now, so big data, so far whatever we have talked, I think everyone is clear on that. So we talked about big data being a challenge for the businesses nowadays. Point number 2 that you need to understand is when we talk about big data, most of the times we think that the volume of the data or the size of the data is a big challenge, but the other 2 bigger challenges that we have are velocity, the processing speed, and the variety of the data. Structured, unstructured data needs to be taken care of. So 3 V's of big data. Third thing, solution is the distributed file system. Hadoop is this framework which works on this distributed file system. Okay. So now for Hadoop, we have 2 different components, core components of Hadoop. One is this distributed file system. So basically what are we talking about? We are talking about 2 things. One, storing the data. Second, processing the data. Clear? So that is the thing, right? That is what we have understood so far. Where do we store the data? Second, how do we process the data? Right? So storage is one challenge and processing of the data is the other challenge or the other thing. So Hadoop framework basically has 2 core components. One is called HDFS, Hadoop Distributed File System. This is Hadoop Distributed File System. This is for storage. Okay. So distributed file system, as I told you, storing the files in a distributed manner in different machines, multiple machines. Okay, that's for the storage part. And MapReduce is for the programming. Okay, so these are the 2 core components of Hadoop. So MapReduce is for processing of the data, right? So that processing can include anything, right? It can include some sort of analysis that we are trying to do or any kind of processing, right? So basically what we have here is, now distributed file system means whenever you put a file, let's say you have a big file, okay, and you put it onto this distributed file system. Okay, so in distributed file system there is an admin node. Okay, so out of all those machines there will be a managing machine, okay, which is basically called the admin node, right? So that manages everything. So if I have a big file, that big file will be broken into pieces and it will be sent to different machines. So one of those machines have to take care of this management part, right? So in simple words, we need to understand that one of the machines has to take care of the management part, right? So from that one source machine, the file will be broken, it will be sent to different machines, and based on that, processing will be done in different machines, right? And the output needs to come back to through the main machine again, right? So we are talking about 2 things. We are talking about processing and we are talking about the file storage, right? So what happens here? Whenever there is this file storage thing here, HDFS cluster, it has an admin node. So the big file comes here. I will just explain this thing in the next slide also. So admin node or the name node, this is where you will have the main file coming in, and then that will be broken into different data nodes, right? So it will be broken into this, okay, and the file will be stored in different data nodes, okay. The same way the processing is a job, a full job that needs to be done. So we are talking about storage and processing. So storage gets broken into different data nodes, which means getting into different machines, and your job also gets into different machines. So job is out of the entire job, the complete job is broken into small tasks, right? So that again goes into different machines. So this is the main machine, and these are so this is the parent or the master, and these are the child machines, right? That is how it works. All right. So to understand this thing a little better, let's say you are the client. You have a big file to put it into your Hadoop or HDFS architecture, right? What happens with that is it initially goes to name node, okay? Now name node breaks this file, okay? Now how does it break the file? Name node breaks the file. So how does, and now you will think that, okay, fine, how many pieces will the file be broken into, okay? So name node breaks the file into blocks. Let's say you have a file of 1 GB, not 1 GB, let's say you have a file of 100 MB, 100 MB, okay? Now name node actually breaks the files into the blocks, okay, and the maximum size of a block is 64 MB. Maximum size of a block is 64 MB. So name node will break your file, which is of 100 MB, into two blocks. One will be 64 MB, the other one will be 36 MB. Got it? If you have 150 MB file, a file size 150 MB, then that file will be broken into three blocks. 64, first one 64 MB, second one 64 MB, third one 22 MB. So that is how the name node breaks the file, okay. Now once that file is broken, these files are sent to different systems, okay. Now the files which, the blocks which have been created, so there was a complete file which came to the name node, okay. From this name node, this file was broken. Let's say I talk about that 100 MB example, the 100 MB file came, it was broken into two blocks, okay. Now that blocks will then be saved in the data nodes, okay. The file broken is the block, data nodes are our child computers. So name node is the parent computer, parent machine, and data nodes are the child computers, right? Now what happens here, these files will be saved in different data nodes or different child computers. That is what we are talking about, right? Distributing the file. So the file has been broken. Now how is it distributed? What is the mechanism of these being distributed? Now these files are saved in different computers, and for security purpose these files are replicated as well. The blocks, not the complete file, the blocks. Right? So for example, your file got broken into two blocks, block 1 and block 2. Now both these blocks will be saved, and their replications will also be saved, okay. So for how is this data, how are these blocks saved in the data nodes? The mechanism behind that is called replication factor, okay. Replication factor is something which you can define how many replicas you want to do of the block, right? By default, the replication factor is 3, which means there will be 3 copies of any block, right, including the original one. So one original block and then 2 replicas of that, right? And all these 3 replicas will be stored in 3 different nodes. So no point of time all the so the replicas will be saved in the same data node. That will not happen. So your first block will have, three replications, so it will go and get stored in 3 nodes. Second block will have 3 replications, it will go and get stored in 3 nodes. So that is the 3 data nodes. So that is how it works actually. Not this thing. So that replication factor you can increase as well. So it does not have to be 3 always. You can make it 5, you can make it 10, based on how much how many data nodes you have, depending on how many machines you have. So you can increase the replication factor. By default it's 3. Got this thing? So now what happens whenever you the client sends a file into this name node, the file is broken into blocks of 64 MB each. Whatever is remaining after breaking the blocks in 64 MB, whatever is less than 64 MB, that becomes another block. Then the replication factor decides on how these 5 blocks are then distributed into the data nodes, right? So that is one part of it. So your data storage, so far it is HDFS, Hadoop database, Hadoop distributed files system, right? So this has taken care of our data storage part. Now the job part. So storing the data is not the only thing, right? Your data has been distributed, your file has been distributed among systems. Now comes the interesting stuff of the job processing. Processing will also again happen in different machines. When you have different machines, the reason for having multiple machines is processing, right? So you have your distributed file system. Now the job is also broken into different machines. Got that thing? And those are called tasks. Okay. So for performing the job, you just don't have to do anything. See, whatever is happening here, all these things you do not have to do. You have that Hadoop architecture which will take care of everything. You just have to put the file. You don't have to actually go and understand which file. This is just for your understanding. How does the architecture work at the back end, right? It automatically breaks it and sends it into the nodes. We just have to define the replication factor. It will automatically replicate that. So that part will be taken care of. Why are we doing the replication? Why does it do the replication? So that even if your one of the nodes goes bad, somehow one of the machines goes bad, you still do not lose the data. Because here it's very important. You cannot afford to lose a small part of the file, because if you lose a small part of the file, you will lose almost the complete file, right? So for that reason, that replication factor is there. Now the job also is processed in small units, so those are called tasks, right? So when you submit a job, again it creates splits tasks, right? So we just have to supply it with a job.jar file and job.xml, right? So XML will have the metadata, jar will have the logics, right? So this is the map reduce part of it. So you will write the program and you will supply the file from your side, and the job will be broken into different tasks. It will be done into different machines, and then again it comes back to the main system. Okay, so this is where it all starts. So everything goes into these data nodes and the task trackers. Processing is done, it comes back here. Okay, again, got that thing? So basically a common understanding is that the output basically of any job is not that big, it's not huge, right? So if you are processing the data of, let's say, 1 year, and there are, let's say, 10,000 records, the output of that analysis will be a small thing, small table, right? A report is not of 10,000 records, right? Analysis or something will come out to be a, hardly something of 3 or 4 rows of data, right? Or 10 rows of data. So output is something which can be then managed on a single machine. Got it? So it gets split through one machine to the multiple machines, and then again the output comes out to on the single machine. So that is how this complete thing works, right? So your map reduce takes care of the processing, and HDFS takes care of the distribution of the file, right? So you might have heard of map reduce also a lot, right? So that's overall about the Hadoop architecture, right? Just wanted you guys to understand a little on this. So that is what Hadoop and its architecture is. Now just to give you a quick overview of what we are going to discuss in our training program. So it's going to be an 8 weeks program where we will talk about HDFS. So we'll talk about HDFS a little more in details on our week 1. Then we'll talk about the setting up of Hadoop clusters. That is what we're going to talk. 3rd week we will talk completely on MapReduce. 4th week we will talk about Pig. Then we'll talk about Hive, HBase. So these are all components of Hadoop ecosystem, right? So for querying the data, for data analysis, so different tools are there. These are all tools to support this Hadoop thing, right? Then we'll talk about Zookeeper, Scoop, Uzi, project demo. So this is how our training program is going to be spread. All right. So that's about our Hadoop and basically the overall course program content that we have. Right now, just a quick understanding of what special are we gonna do in these sessions, right? So when you plan to take up a training program, you have certain options and you try to evaluate those options and try to understand which option is good for you, right? So I will just I will not talk on those things at length. I will just give you a few very important points that might help you decide on which training program is a good training program for you. Fine. You should decide on a few factors. The first factor is the experience. When you're getting trained from some trainer or when you're taking up a training program, you just need to see how much experience the trainer and the training institute has, right? We have been providing trainings on this for almost 3 years, right? So a big experience of the big data Hadoop training that we have. Okay, we have all experienced people working with us. We have a big community of Hadoop developers, and not just Hadoop, again cloud technology developers. So that is what we have. We are associated with almost 15 US consulting companies. So these are companies for which we provide the trainings and we help them place their resources, right? So that is the kind of experience we have. We train close to 200 candidates on Hadoop itself every month. So that is the kind of experience that we have, right? Second thing is, how good that training program is going to be for you, or what advantages that basically you get from that training program. So the training quality is one thing that we can assure you on. The second good thing that we try to do, because of our experience, we have realized we are into the business of producing the best resources. As I told you that we take care of at least 15 US consulting companies, and we have to train them in a way so that they can be placed. Okay, so we make you hireable. We don't train you in such a way that if you do not get a job, we are not worried, right? The point is that you need to get trained in such a way so that you can get a good job. You can make out something out of that training program. It should not happen that okay, you've just done the training and then it's not worth it. That should not happen, right? So for that reason, what we try to do, out of our experience, what we have realized is most of the times when you are attending a 6 weeks, 8 weeks training programs, chances are there that whatever you attended in your first week, you might forget after 2 weeks. That can happen, right? Today also I talked about a few topics. Not sure if you will remember everything by tomorrow or day after tomorrow, right? So that is where we try to give you all the support possible from our side. We give you recorded sessions. All the trainings that you do, we give you recorded sessions for all those trainings. Okay, so we have our own YouTube channel and we share it with you, these recorded sessions, right? So you can actually go back and look into the videos, recorded videos, and do a quick recap from your side. right? So you do not keep on, struggling. What we noticed earlier is that people, doing the sessions, and after that, after the sessions, if they have a, small doubt, they do not know where to go, right? So we share the recorded sessions with you. Next, what do? We share our, we have a support team available. If you're working on something, you have a doubt, you can reach our support team. Let's say you attended the session, and after doing the session, when you went back home, you tried doing things on your own, you are not able to find a solution. So the support team is there which can help you. You can always, come back, ask the support team that, okay, fine, this is what I am trying to do, it's not happening. These are all concepts, I understand there are, quite a few people from, India who are attending this webinar. These are all concepts which are applicable nowhere in India, and I can give it to you in writing. We can afford to do that because we have our own, Hadoop implementations projects, and we can afford to do that. No other training institute can even dare to talk about providing a support team. They will be worried about cost, but we are worried more about your future, your understanding, your learning. So we have this support available. Next thing, we have online discussion forums. So these discussion forums is a pretty simple concept, where we make you the part of email group, right? So if you are struggling with something, you always do not have to work, wait for the support team, or you just do not have to wait for the trainer. You can always write an email or small doubt on that group. Anyone from the group can give you an answer. So this group or this online discussion forum is not just for asking doubts, because doubts anyhow will get cleared. It is for sharing knowledge. You learned a new thing, you did a small thing, you want to share with others, just want to get others' opinion. You are applying for a job, and there were a few questions which were asked which you want to share with others. So that is the thing. I mean, we try to create an environment. So for us, we try to create an environment where you learn it as if you are working in a company or working in an organization, and then you are learning it. So that is the complete objective. So these are a few things. I mean, if you are looking for a really high quality, good quality training at a very good price, and all these for features and functionalities and everything, definitely we are the right choice. So that is what. Alright, so that is what I had to talk about. I think